a little bit about Australia. So the first part especially is kind of geared for the kids. So I want to know who can show me where Australia is. Just run up there to show me. You're right. The big yellow one is Australia. So now, who can tell me which one of those flags is Australia? Which one? Shout it out.
That one.
This one?
Yeah.
That's Japan.
That one.
That one. That's correct. That one's Australia. Okay. Two of these animals are native to Australia. Which ones? Just shout it out.
Panda, koala and kangaroo. Koala and kangaroo.
Koala and kangaroo. Very good. All right. We got koala and kangaroo on the table over there if you haven't noticed it. All right. Here's some sports that are popular in Australia. Which one do you think is the most popular?
The surfboarding.
Surfboarding one? Think so? Any other guesses? What do you think?
Rugby.
Rugby. The soccer one.
The soccer one or rugby? What's this one up here? Is that baseball?
Cricket.
Cricket is the most popular. All of them are popular, but cricket is the most popular. Kind of like baseball is the American pastime. I don't know if it's the most popular anymore, but cricket is very popular in Japan. Okay. Which of those buildings is really well known in Australia? Shout it out.
That one. Sydney.
What's that one called?
Sydney the Opera House.
It's the Opera House, Sydney Opera House. It's a big amphitheater, you're right about that. Okay. We got some things that you can throw. Which one of those is from Australia?
Boomerang. The boomerang. The boomerang.
Boomerang. Okay. Now, all of these animals are in Australia. Two of them there's more of these animals than people. Which two do you think are more common than people? Sheep and kangaroos? What do you think? What do you think? You think crocodiles? What did I hear over there? A couple of you had it right. Sheep. So there are 25 million people in Australia. There are 50 million kangaroos.
Wow.
So twice as many. And there are 3 times as many, 75 million sheep in Australia. All right, so one of these is a way that you can say hello in Australia. Which one? What do you think, Brandon?
Good day. The blue.
The blue one? You could say that.
Good day.
Good day.
Good day, mate.
Good day. Good day, mate. Okay. And one of these is a way to say thank you. Which one do you think?
Ta.
Ta, maybe?
Red. Whatever that one is.
Gracias?
Oh, I didn't know how to pronounce that. I'm guessing red.
Arigato?
Thank you.
Danke?
No, thank you.
Ta.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't even know that until recently. When I was living in Chiba, in Japan, we had an Australian on our team, and I would sometimes have our missionary team at my house for dinner, and when she would leave, she would say ta, and I thought it meant goodbye. And so I'd say ta back to her. And I was saying thank you, apparently. I just learned that this last summer. Okay, so now a little bit more about Australia. So Australia is the smallest continent on Earth. It is the 6th largest nation in the world, and it's the only continent that is just one nation in and of itself. So unique in a lot of different ways. 35% of the land area is desert. If you add in the arid, semi-arid, that doubles to 70%. So not a lot of rain in most of Australia. Although some sections like up here and down here get a lot of rain and are actually considered tropical. And there's mountains and such as well. In fact, mountains are 17% of the land area. So not a lot of mountains. Highest mountain is only like 7,000 feet, I think, so nothing like Colorado. Urban centers are only in a few small pockets. So Sydney is over here, this is where I'll be living. Melbourne, Perth, and then most of this area is just hardly anyone living anywhere. This area down here, it's kind of rural, but like not completely isolated, but yeah, a lot of places that just have no people living anywhere. If you compare Australia to the size of America, it is a little bit smaller than the lower 48 states. Does that surprise anybody? On the maps, usually, Australia, because it's down the bottom, it's quite small. No, because it's not that far south, I guess. Like Greenland is up north, and so it's way huge, but Greenland's actually smaller than Australia. If you compare the people, it's kind of similar to Texas. So 25.5 million people in Australia, and 28 million in Texas. Anybody from Texas here? All right. So Texas, I love to say that there's nothing smaller in Texas, nothing bigger in Texas than the ego of a Texan. So I love this little fact. If you were to compare Texas to the states of Australia, it would be one of the smallest states, John. It's actually, so Western Australia, Northern Territory, Southern Queensland, New South Wales is where I'll be. This is actually a little bit bigger than Texas. So only Victoria and Tasmania are smaller than Texas. Hurts your heart, doesn't it? Population density would be similar to Montana. 7 people per square mile in Montana, 9 in Australia. So again, just a lot of big empty spaces. Evangelical Christian population is about 6%, so that's about 1.5 million. So going back down to Texas, that would be like if everybody in the city of San Antonio was Christian and no one else was. That'd be similar in Australia. Several years ago, the Sydney newspaper asked their readers would the world be a better place without religion? And 80% of the people said yes. So that's a little bit of how the people think. It's very much like Europe. It's very post-Christian, post-modern sort of culture. So I'm going to be working with MTW team in Sydney, and they have 3 primary ministries. So the main ministry, so to speak, is the church, called Harbor City Church. So that ministry started in 2008 with small groups, and in 2010 with weekly worship services. That church is a member of the Westminster Presbyterian denomination, which only has about 15 congregations in Australia. Most of those are in the far west in Perth, only 1 in New South Wales, and then a few up north in Queensland. So very small denomination, but they were actually planted by World Presbyterian Mission, which was the predecessor that kind of became Mission to the World when the PCA came into existence back in the 70s. The church was planted by our team leader, Jim Jung, and his wife, Claudia. So they were the original missionaries there in Sydney, and he continues on as the leader there. In addition to that, he has responsibility. He's like the regional director for Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific Islands. There's several Presbyterian denominations, for example, in Samoa and Vanuatu and Fiji, I believe it is. And so he goes to these places sometimes as well as regional director. So he's got his hands full. The second ministry was actually the first one that started. He actually started SOW, Student Outreach to the World. He started that before the church, doing university ministry. It's basically like RUF, Reformed University Fellowship. And so they have active SOW chapters on 4 different universities in Sydney. And once a week, they all come together from all 4 campuses for a large group worship time, and then they do Bible studies on their individual campuses. So each university chapter has a campus pastor as well that leads their particular group. And so they're just a very active group, doing lots of athletic things and retreats and various things. Now, as you're looking at the pictures, you probably notice almost everybody in the picture is of Asian descent. So the Caucasian population, the white population of Australia, is very resistant to the gospel. A lot of them are very bitter against the church because of scandals in the Anglican and Catholic churches. They've been hurt by it, or their parents have been hurt by it, and so they're very close to the gospel typically. Although some missionaries from Australia in Osaka told me that they've kind of been seeing, they've heard that some of the younger people now, they're so far removed from the church that they don't really have much experience themselves with it, and that they're actually probably a little bit more open to the gospel than their parents have been. But the Asian immigrant population, in Australia, only whites were allowed to immigrate until 1980-ish, somewhere about there, when they finally opened up immigration to other cultures. And so the Asian population is only about 12%, but it's proving to be a lot more open to the gospel. So that's one reason. And of course, Jim Jung is Korean American, so it's largely of Asian descent. And it's very, very diverse from Vietnamese and Korean and Chinese and just everybody, Japanese as well. So so the SO ministry, actually there's hoping to become a Reformed University International, RUFI, sometime in the next year, to be officially under RUF canopy as well. So I will have a smaller role with SO in addition to primary responsibilities, which will be with City Sanctum. City Sanctum is a new ministry that was developed about 3 or 4 years ago, and it's basically RUF for adults. It kind of came out of SO. They were seeing a lot of their graduates, they were graduating, they were perhaps members of a church somewhere, but it might be a really small church, it might be an elderly church, they might not have great fellowship, they might not have greatest teaching always, and so they saw this need for continued ministry with some of their SO graduates, and so they started City Sanctum. And so City Sanctum right now meets just once a month as a whole group. They have smaller individual Bible studies as well, but once a month they meet in this restaurant here on the 3rd floor for a large group meeting, and they have dinner. In fact, they get a free dinner because MTW applied for a grant for new ministries, and so we're able to pay for their dinners. They buy their drinks and such themselves. Typically, this is Jim Jung again, so someone will speak on some sort of topic that's pertinent to a young adult. Right now it's mostly under 30, although we hope that people won't graduate from it and it'll become more diverse age-wise as the ministry ages. But so there'll be topics like working in a toxic work environment, personal budgeting, office romance, all these different things that young adults might be dealing with fresh out of college. And everything, of course, from a Christian perspective. This event is a really easy event to be able to invite non-Christian co-workers and friends to as well. So it's definitely got a strong evangelistic aspect to it as well. But the majority of the people that attend this are Christians themselves as well. And so one of the things that we do a lot of is just mentoring them and really feeding them and encouraging them to know how to share the gospel in their work environment, to know how to share their gospel in their neighborhood and around the world as well. So a large part of my time, I'll be kind of the new director for the City Sanctum, relieving Jim Jung of responsibilities for that. And so a lot of my time will be spent with the core group of this organization and mentoring them and really working in their lives, I guess, as well. So the little catchphrase, the little slogan that I came up with for my blog and such is what you see here, equipping to the ends of the earth. One of the primary visions of the MTW team in Sydney is to encourage missions among the people that we work with. Again, the vast majority of them are Asian Australians. So first or second generation Asian Australians. So encouraging them, equipping them to be able to go back to their home countries, perhaps the country of their parents or grandparents, or to other places throughout Asia Pacific as well, and to be missionaries or to be supporting those who do go. And so I really see it as an opportunity to multiply the work that I do. When I was in Japan this past summer to close down our Genesis team, and I visited 3 other MTW teams in Japan, and I did eliminate one of them as a possibility, but 2 of them were great opportunities for me. I would have loved to join those teams. They were great teams, largely doing university ministry and English ministry, and would have loved to join them. Went to Australia, and actually the first few days I was in Australia, I felt like, I don't think this is it. I don't think this is where God's going to call me. I was having a good time. I loved the team there. It just didn't feel right. And I think a big part of that was because it's not Japan, and what I know of missions right now is Japan. It's not Osaka, and I love Osaka. Sydney's a great city, but it's not the city that I know and love. And so I had these 3 teams that I was considering. Where do I go? So a number of years ago, 2009 or 8, somewhere in there, I'd been approved to be a missionary in Japan, but my job at Belhaven the doors were open for staying there or for being promoted. My dream job back at my alma mater in Iowa finally came open, and I went to visit a wise man sitting on that back row back there. He's like, Steve, help me think through this. I've got 4 great opportunities. What do I do? And some of the advice he gave to me was, number 1, what are your desires? Number 2, what are your abilities? You might desire to be an NBA player, but I couldn't play basketball when I was young, well, right now. Number 3, what are your opportunities? So desires, abilities, and opportunities. Where do those 3 meet? And then of all those, where do you think you can perhaps have the most impact to the kingdom of God? And so that's what I was thinking through. It's like all 3 sites, the 2 in Japan and the 1 in Sydney, all 3 of them met that opportunity, desire, and gifts, I felt like. But where can I have the biggest impact? And I decided it was Australia because of the emphasis on equipping young people to go out and be missionaries. The picture here, again, Jim Jung on the left, young man on the right, his name is Sijin, which is a Korean name. I've never heard of that before. Born in Australia. Sijin is in his final year of seminary at Moore Theological College in Sydney. Right now he's the campus pastor for one of those So University ministries. I met Sijin in 2016, 2015, somewhere in there. A group of about 10 university students came to Japan, and they were working for, it was their summer break in December. They were working with all the different MTW teams, and they came down to Osaka for Christmas. Nobody else wanted them because it's Christmas. I'm with my family. It's like, hey, come down. I have no family. Come on down. So they were with me and our team down there for 5 days or so, handing out flyers for a big Christmas event and such. Sijin actually stayed a few extra days and then stayed with me for about a week after that because his desire is to be a missionary in Japan. And so he's now, like I said, finishing his last year of seminary and hoping to be going to Japan in the next couple of years. So it's exciting to be able to see that vision starting to produce fruit already. I've got this picture up here because this is what life sometimes seems like to me. I've not actually ever been in one of these things, but I can imagine being inside these hedgerows, this maze, how confusing it might be trying to find your way out. And life, to me, sometimes seems like this. You're going around these corners and you reach a dead end. All right, now where? What do I have to do now? Back up, find another route. And that's what, life seems difficult and unknown and uncertain so often, at least it has for me. But I think probably this picture is more accurate of our life. Even though we might not be able to see the end, life has its twists and turns, but God has a plan. It's one path. God has a path. It might seem like you're at a dead end. So with Genesis, dead end, start a new path. But no, this is a continuation of God's plan for me and for each of us. God has a plan for us if we're His children and we're walking with Him, that even when we're not walking with Him sometimes, He uses those paths, those places that we go, to get to His end, to His final desire for us. And so I'm encouraged that, Genesis is no longer. I'm sad about that. I put a lot of heart and soul into that, but I'm excited about the opportunities in Sydney. A couple of prayer requests, and then I'll take some questions if you like as well. Pray for me as I'm preparing for ministry in Sydney. Sydney, again, is not one of those places that seems like a great, it's not the first place to think of for missions. Why would you go to Sydney? Basically they're America with a funny accent and driving on the wrong side of the road, right? But no, they have a funny accent. Yeah, they drive on the other side of the road. But culturally, they are very different as well. Their way of thinking is very different from American thinking. They're very egalitarian. In other words, they are everyone is equal. You might be Prime Minister of Australia, but who are you to tell me what to do? They don't like authority, so the church as well is authority. They don't like the church for that reason as well. Just a lot of different things that I don't even have any idea about yet. So learning the culture is going to be a big learning experience for me when I get there. I'm doing a little bit of reading right now about culture as well, trying to understand Australia's way of thinking. So I'm going to be adjusting culture. I'm also just preparing for mentoring, because that'll be a major component of my ministry in Australia. Support raising. I'm at 84% of my budget right now. When I was in Japan, the Japanese missionaries, we all talked about, I don't know why God brought us to the most expensive mission field on earth, He could have brought us somewhere cheap, but we were wrong. Australia is more expensive. When I was visiting Australia this past summer, Jim and his wife were telling me, Australia might be more expensive. And I thought, well, if it is, just a little bit maybe. And then in July, I got my budget, and it's $1,000 a month more than Osaka. In Osaka, I was living in the heart of the city for strategic reasons. In Sydney, I will not be. So I'll be living in an area that's cheaper than downtown, but yet $1,000 a month more. So in addition to that $1,000 a month, over the last 4 years in Osaka, prior to going to Osaka, there had been excess one-time gifts more than my one-time budget, and so all those excess one-time gifts were put in a reserve fund, and they were doled out to me over the course of 48 months, and that was $1,003 of my monthly budget over the last 4 years. So I already had to make up $1,000 there. So right now I'm at 84%, which means right about $1,500 a month is what I need to still make up. I did lose a little bit of support because of moving from Japan to Australia, but most of my support team and churches have stayed with me as well. So pray for that. My goal has been to get to 90% by the end of October. That's coming up real fast. And then 100% by the end of November. And then in December to apply for visa. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. To apply for a visa to live there, which is more difficult actually than Japan. Australia, a number of years ago, they really cut back on how many visas they give out, especially for, or particularly for religious workers. I've been told it's a fear of having the Muslims come in too much. So anyone they basically don't do religious worker visas anymore. So having to be creative in, all right, where can I fit in? And if I don't find one that I can fit into, a certain category that I can fit into, then I would have to go on a tourist visa, which is a 90-day visa, and I'd have to leave the country every 90 days. And for about $300, you can fly to New Zealand on a round trip. And they don't care, you can come back an hour later, but you have to leave the country. Now going to New Zealand doesn't sound bad, but I don't want to have to leave every 90 days. Don't want to have to just be, living in that uncertainty. So pray that I'm able to find a category and get approved for a resident worker visa of some sort. My departure goal is January, right after the first of the year, and so there's a lot to accomplish before that. Again, I want to thank you. Many of you have been praying for me, giving support as well, and so I thank you for that, and for your encouragement. Can't do this without people like y'all, so thank you. Any questions?